All right, everyone. Welcome to the 28th Rental Roundtable. We have on Joe Valen. Joe, welcome to the Roundtable.
What's up, Kyle? Thanks for having me.
I'm excited. We've known each other for a few years. It's crazy. We've already got to 28 episodes and we haven't had you on yet. But yeah, excited today. You're the general manager of Millennium Rental Leasing based out of Wisconsin. Excited to talk to you, particularly because your rental business has skyrocketed from where you were 4 years ago. And I'm excited to talk about some of the lessons learned and to hear more of your journey.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, excited to talk through it. And I appreciate the compliment on the growth. Well, lots of mistakes made along the way. So anybody struggling through this journey, you can still succeed while you're struggling. You're going to get it. You got it.
The title of this episode, What Not to Do by Joe. No, kidding. But a lot, we were talking to Elliot. We mentioned earlier Elliot Mitchell last week. He said he's failed more than anyone he's ever met, which is maybe true or not true. But that's sort of how you go, right? If you're gonna do something great, you have to fail. You have to take risks, right? And I think you're overstating the failures you've had because I know how well the business is done. But that is the crux of this. I think this episode, what I'm excited about is you're going to talk about some of the things that went well, but the things that didn't go so well. So people listening in, there's a lot to learn.
Yeah, for sure. Good recap.
Yeah. So Joe, let's jump in. Love to just hear about your journey, sort of how you got into rentals. I don't think you knew much about it when you first started, sort of, my background as well. Here we are on the podcast talking about equipment rental. Probably didn't think we'd be doing this 5 years ago, but talk to me about how you got into this niche industry and talk to me about your journey in the equipment rental segment.
No. And it is weird because sometimes I don't think I'm necessarily in the rental industry at times. We are pretty focused in that niche industry. So with that, I got into this niche industry because I love getting dirty. I love equipment. So I got into the telecom industry and really supporting a lot of contractors that are out constructing fiber networks. But the organization, they saw how driven I was and focused I was with equipment. So I love the gadgets. I love the equipment. I found out very early on that if I focus on equipment, I'm bringing efficiencies to the contractors that I'm supporting. And that took our transactional sales to more of a solution selling because I was able to help them be more productive with the resources that they had. So with that being said, super focused on the equipment and our organization was like, hey, we've been trying to get a rental fleet going. And every time we try to do it, it's a disaster. We don't know where our equipment is. It's hard to invoice the processes. This just does not look, feel, taste like the distribution model that we are used to operating in. So with my curiosity on equipment and drive to always kind of challenge myself, this opportunity kind of presented itself to figure out our rental fleet.
Yeah. So you were mostly interested in equipment, how to serve your customers better. And then the opportunity was like, hey, we need to expand into rental. And you were the guy, right? And this is what, 2019, 2020?
Yeah. So 2020 is when that rental fleet was kind of starting to form. And in 2021 is when I officially started focusing on building that rental fleet.
And you've been around equipment before that, right? How long have you been around construction equipment?
Yeah. I have been around equipment and motorcycles my whole life. So working on equipment, I've always had that mechanical background. But the equipment that we have in our rental fleet, I really probably since like 2014 or so was when I started acquainting myself as a sales rep.
Cool. So it's been 10 years. You actually especially been around equipment longer than that in your personal life. So take me back to 2021. You're now in charge of the rental division. It's very small compared to where it is now. What are you thinking? What did you know about rental back then?
Yeah. So we kind of started this by saying, hey, that you're going to learn about what not to do. And this is where we're going to kick that journey off, guys. So 2021, I come in and the assumption is that we have about 150 rental assets in our fleet, and we were doing about $68,000 of rental business. And there was 2 employees solely dedicated to the rental business. But thinking about the number of assets that we thought we had sitting on our books and, 2 other employees we had, something wasn't lining up. So I wanted to dive into the data. So 6 months of my life was focused on data. And I mentioned earlier of, having that sales background. Data and process usually not like super strong with the sales folks, right? I love every salesperson out there. It is my heart and soul, but it took a whole lot of focus honing in, trying to find out, okay, I don't think we have 150 assets. If we are, we're not invoicing them. Maybe that was the case some of the time. So I spent that whole year trying to audit, figure out how many assets we have, and trying to figure out how to improve our process. So on the backside of that, I found out we had about 75-ish assets. So that's where we had to dig in and start making a whole lot of process.
So you took it over, thought you had 150 assets, you had half that, you had 75. It's not off, you had 147, like you're off by a factor of 50%. Like what was the ownership team saying? Were they like, what the heck's going on? Like I imagine that's probably a pretty big wake-up call.
Yeah. I mean, some of the assets weren't even on our books. So it was definitely a big wake-up call. And I mean, as I treated that money in this business like it was my own money. So it was then diving into how do we prevent this? I just found our baseline. We've got us down to ground zero. Now, what can we do to prevent this from happening again? So for 2021, I mean, that was 6 months solid of trying to focus on process. So for me, as that sales guy, what I quickly learned was process needs to be systems. We need to have the system in place. Trying to manage process through people can be cumbersome, especially as you're evolving fast. It can create a lot of stress for people. But if you're able to get that into your system, your software, then it really becomes process. And it becomes more concrete. So as I was creating all that process, this is where I probably big lesson I learned in 2021. So I'm making all this process, trying to implement it into our software. And every time we've found a mistake of this weird circumstance, I'd be like, okay, well, hey, I'm working on the systems. We'll lace that in there. So one, creating our process, I was doing a lot of knee jerk of trying to put a Band-Aid on every single problem that popped up. And then 2, I made it way too complex because of that. And it took way longer than it should have. So the big lesson, Kyle, stepping back on that was, all right, let's just try to cover 80% of process. Let's get the big items. Let's keep this simple.
Yeah, the 80-20 rule, I'm a big believer in, and the whole idea that perfect is often the enemy of good. So you took this over, effectively had no process where half your inventory is unaccounted for, right? And maybe you took it to the other extreme, right? Where you're like, hey, we're going to process everything, right? And I think the other thing that we've talked about is because of your ownership structure owned by a bigger corporation, right? You guys use NetSuite ERP, right? Which is not necessarily designed for rental, right? So you're sort of also stuck because you have to use a system that is probably great at a lot of things, but they're not specifically designed for rental, right? So that also probably added some challenges on top of the things that you guys were dealing with. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's only a few companies that I know of that are operating in NetSuite that are in the rental world. So if any of you are doing that, reach out to me. I can try to help you. And chances are there's something you're doing that could help us. So
Yeah,
we need a community. Reach out.
that's right.
It's a genuine offer, please.
All right. Well, any NetSuite ERP rental companies, reach out to Joe. We talk. So 2021, you're adding these processes. You probably took it a little too far, but you've grown that business, what, fivefold, sevenfold to multi-million-dollar of revenue to where we are today. So, you sort of joke and you sort of like downplay all the mistakes you've made, but a lot of things have gone well.
Yeah.
Talk to me about how that rental business started to really take off in 2022, 2023. What was going well at that point?
Yeah. So, 2020, we were like, we were under 100K in just rental business. And then in 2021, I came on board and, heading the data and process systems. And we ended up growing to 400,000 that year. And then in 2022, so I now have some process in place that is always continually evolving. But at that point, it's like, all right, we have 2 people on our team, and I'm not ashamed to hire anybody now because we do have some process. We have something that's a little bit more scalable, and we have more bumpers to bring on a team. So in 2022 is a huge focus on building a team. So we start bringing on some sales folks and some support staff. And that was probably our biggest leap. By end of 2022, that's where we went above and beyond that $1 million mark for that first time. So, starting having those bumpers in place with our process, and then being able to build a team within those bumpers to let them kind of independently run.
It's like building a house. You got the foundation right. Even if it wasn't the perfect foundation, it was a foundation, right? It's better than quicksand. And once you had that in 2021, then you started to add to the team. A lot of people we talk to, they always, we talk about customer service. A lot of people go, okay, how do I grow, right? And talk to me about sales, right? And I think that's a background you have as well. What was working with some of the salespeople you hired that allowed you to sort of, not even take the next step, take those several next steps as you found it grown rapidly?
Yeah. So, that success we had with our sales reps is, one, we had those bumpers for them to operate in, and it's really empowering them to learn and make their own mistakes. So with, training, I'm a huge believer of somebody's got to want to learn. And I could put together a 2-week training on the equipment, the industry, all of that. And maybe 50% of it is retained, maybe less. I don't know. The training where people are coming to you and asking those specific questions or going out and learning by themselves, that is hands down the quickest way to grow. So giving them their autonomy to operate, to educate themselves, and being there for them when they're ready to ask those questions and dropping whatever you have to support them was definitely, I think, something powerful for that sales team. Where I fell short with that sales team, though, was we had, their accountabilities figured out and what we wanted that to look like and what the end result was. But the big lesson there with building that initial team was I did not give them the tools or resources of, well, what do you need to do this week? What are some predictive goals of, hey, how many phone calls should I be making? How many meetings should I be making? What should my pipeline look like? Our team was kind of struggling with, I come in and I don't really know if I had a good day or a good week. So that was a big lesson learned to really support the sales team to keep them driving into the next year.
I mean, it sounds like when we took the business over, there was nothing, no structure, right? It was, didn't know what the assets were, didn't have a team, You hired the team. There's no programs and sales programs in place, and you developed all of that. The other thing you said, you empower them to be able to take risks, which you felt like was important, right? Allowing people to fail. How did you develop that culture? Were there specific things you were doing to allow people to try things that didn't always pan out?
I would imagine one of our first sales reps, Kelly, will end up listening to this, but poor Kelly. Honestly, sometimes it was, all right, I've got the information at my fingertip. I've shared that information with him before, and he's asking again. And sometimes it's just a matter of saying, hey, go check out this resource. You might be able to find your answer there. So it was a matter of almost saying no sometimes to make them dig and make the choices on their own. Or to just give them enough information so they have to make that choice. That whole kind of like monkey on the back. So come to me with a problem or a certain deal that you want to do with the customer. Is this a good or bad choice? Well, you have access to all the data. You tell me these are the things that I would consider. What's the future potential? What type of risk is associated with it? You make that choice. You know the customer better than I do. If I make this decision, overseeing the business, I'm very fine-tuned with our financials. I'm not as fine-tuned with the clients. That's your responsibility to be fine-tuned with our clients, and I want to make the best decisions for our clients.
Sounds like you pushed all the decision making further down the organization, which is a philosophy I subscribe to. You essentially you give everyone, you're transparent, you empower people, you line the right incentive structure, and then you sort of get out of the way. You coming to me with a question. I mean, you answer it, right? Like you know all the information I do. You actually probably know more information because you're talking to the customer. Sounds like you've really empowered your employees to make more decisions. And as part of that, when they come to you with stuff, you just say, look, I'm not answering that. You go figure it out, right? I guess probably after several of those conversations, you started to develop, your team probably sort of got the picture. Okay, I'm the guy to make that decision. I'm the girl to make that decision now, right? It sounds like you sort of developed that over time.
Yeah, no, the get out of the way. I mean, you're kind of spot on, and it's a really uncomfortable feeling. I coach basketball, and in 2021, I was playing one-on-one basketball. So I could dribble, run, play defense hard as I wanted. And I was there by myself. I was going hard. And then as, we scale our team, now we're playing 2-on-2 basketball. Now we're playing 3-on-3 basketball. And when I'm driving that hard 1-on-1, if I were to continue to do that while we're playing 3-on-3, my teammates would not be very happy. So I had to kind of get out of their way and let them grow into their full potential as well. And it's an uncomfortable feeling. Definitely an uncomfortable feeling of kind of not being aware of every single deal, not being aware of every single relationship, not being aware of every single problem or issue within our organization. But the next stage of growth that came in like 2023, it came because I was able to focus on growing the business more instead of being involved with those day-to-day or week-to-week transactions and relationships.
So there's several benefits to getting out of the way. One is it allows you to work on the business, not in the business, right? And you can sort of figure out where the vision of the company is going. Number two, it also empowers the team, right? Because what I found is I've hired people who are usually smarter than me and better at their jobs than I am. Where I started the company, I was the first employee, the only employee. Then we had 2 employees and 3. But at some point, it was like, okay, I don't even know who this customer is. Like someone on our team signed them, someone launched them. They've been a customer for a year. Like, I just saw a support ticket from them. Who are they? And it was like sort of this like, I want to know every single thing, but like,
right,
we're not actually going to be the business we want to be if I don't get out of the way and let go of stuff. And I'm like, I find myself constantly firing myself in jobs. I was the first salesperson fired, first support person fired, first product manager fired. And that's actually growth, but it's still hard, especially when it's your baby, right? And you're sort of having to like,
yes. And that's, part of that getting out of the way, making mistakes of when you are firing yourself from being that product manager, whatever role it is, I am probably to the point where it's borderline annoying of telling whoever takes that responsibility over. I tell them over and over, like, listen, I've got no pride in you destroying what I've created. I want you to find what is wrong with this. I have been looking at this from my, sales guy's perspective. This is the first time we ever created this certain process or service that we have. So please don't be afraid just because I'm running the rental business here. Don't be afraid to tear this apart. I want it to be better. I want our clients to have the best experience. I want whatever we build to be built to keep our clients on the go. Keeping our clients moving fast is like our sole purpose. And with that, we believe we can become the industry's first call for equipment. And that's where we're aiming. So if I don't empower our team, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. It's like if you guys want to be, especially if one of your core competitive advantages, you're going to be quick to respond to customers. Well, you also sleep, I assume, sometimes. You eat lunch sometimes. You're not all this guy who can take every single call, right? So, and I think that's a hard thing to wrestle with. But, you mentioned you're a basketball fan. Phil Jackson has several great books. Looking at one of them right now, 11 Rings. But he talks about when he won 11 championships plus 2 as a player. And he found that when he was the best leader he could be is when he was fully invisible. When the 5 players on the court were running and they weren't looking over at the coach to see what to do. He had created that foundation, right, for the players to be their full potential. And, 5 players ended up playing better than 7 players or 10 players, right, because they all compounded together. But he felt like his leadership was at its highest potential when he was not being seen.
Yeah, that's awesome. I absolutely love that. And that even kind of like, that resonates with me of thinking to like 2023. I mentioned at that point, I was able to kind of step back and focus working on the business. And again, talk about making mistakes. In 2023, one of our longer tenured rental employees came up to me and was like, hey, listen, kind of become the man behind the iron curtain. And that was such a wake up call that I was so focused on the business and I started losing a little bit of that touch of the people and making sure that they felt valued and they're being heard. So that was a big learning lesson in 2023 when I was working on the business so much. I was not working with the people as much as I should have.
Well, I think the best way to work on the business, you still have to be in touch with the business. And I struggle with that too. But I still do sales calls every week. I still do support every week. I still meet with the engineering team every week because I feel like if I'm not, you sort of lose touch with things. And I got to take a couple of questions when I get to. One from Donald Charbonnet out of Louisiana, one of our first 10 Roundtable guests. So Joe, maybe you'll come back and ask questions in the future. Perfect. More of a comment though, and I agree with, he's been in the industry 5+ decades. He said one of the biggest issues in the equipment rental industry is to teach people how to think for themselves. How have you able to, maybe talk a little bit more about that. How have you been able to really empower people to think for themselves rather than come back to you with the same solution that you've already started with?
Yeah, I think it's all about teaching them where their resources are. So we can't always be the fountain of knowledge. You got to know where your resources are. We work in a niche industry with kind of niche equipment. Some of the equipment we have, there's not even manuals online. So you have to be able to be resourceful to find the information you need to support our clients. So it was definitely take the time to let them know where their resources are. But you do not have to teach them everything within that tool belt. So be able to know where the tool drawer is, let them figure out the tools.
Exactly. Connect the dots, show them where everything is. Put them, because you can't, the whole like taking a horse to drink water. You can't make them drink water, but you can sort of lead them there, right? And that's what you start off with. The people you hire, you have to hire curious people, driven people, setting them up for success. Another question we got, which I told you we get some questions on the growth side, which we always do. More than doubling revenue in 1 year is awesome. How did you think about that growth strategy? Did your sales team generate their own leads through cold calling? Or did you get leads from another source with an inbound referral? I think you've doubled revenue now multiple years, but talk to me about that growth strategy.
Yeah. So doubling that revenue, so our revenue, a certain percentage of it does come from our greater parent company. So that is absolutely an advantage that we have to be able to accomplish these goals. So we have a list of thousands of contacts in our ERP. So it was a combination of, okay, how can we get the greater sales team the knowledge and tools they need to be successful, but our sales team that is dedicated to rentals, of how do we get them to focus on the most important opportunities. So if we have 4,000 prospects or clients in our system that aren't doing business with the rental business, and we have at that time, I think it was 3 sales reps we had on, how do those 3 sales reps start building relationships with 4,000 clients? That is an exhausting thing to figure out. So I went back to kind of a systematic approach of how can we qualify where to spend time to give them direction to really, instead of shooting a shotgun, shooting a sniper. So we created very honed in lists and qualifying ways for them to maximize their time. Yeah. So with that, it was a combination of, advantage of being with a parent company. But the second part was giving them bulletproof prospect list to then grow their sales so that they could be successful. So highly qualified prospect list for them to cold call off of. We also, outside of the sales side of it, was content. Content has absolutely played a big part in our growth. We've got a YouTube channel that it has got technical help for somebody that's out in the field of, hey, this broke, what do I do? Or, hey, I've never used this machine before, what do I do? And then also there is some sales related content on there as well. But that has driven a ton of inbound leads. So probably about half of our business is inbound leads. And I attribute it to a lot of our social media presence on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube. Facebook groups have been very, very impactful for us.
That's great. Well, as I mentioned, we just did 3 episodes with Elliot Vigil last week. He's sort of like the sales mastermind in the equipment rental space. And one of the things he said, which stuck out for me, was it's not who you know, it's who knows you. And his whole strategy, if you go to LinkedIn, he's everywhere, every page. His whole thing, like when you're up at 2 a.m, you can't sleep. He wants to be in your feet, right? And but his other thing he talked about was adding real value first before you can even try to sell someone. You want to add value, and often for free. It sounds like you guys have taken a similar strategy where you've been able to give real how-to guides, how to help people who are stuck on understanding equipment or stuck with solving a certain problem. You guys are putting content out there to help people, right? So then by the time they do want to rent something, you're the top of the list. They trust you. They know you. They like you. You're not just cold calling random people. You are building content that people start to know you before they even call you for the first time. And I mean, half your leads are inbound. That's amazing.
Yeah. And that's exactly it. We choose our vendors kind of based on that as well, of like, okay, well, what's their philosophy? Are they focused on supporting clients when they need help? Do they have that technical support? So to become the industry's first call for equipment, we need to have partners that are focused on supporting our clients, and we need to stay there as well. So like with our video content, we rarely are ending that saying, hey, you can buy this for $17,999 or whatever it is. It is adding value. It is nuts and bolts stuff that might be really boring for some people, and that's good. The people that are maybe bored by that content aren't our rental clients in the telecom industry. That's fine and great. The people that are reaching out from us there, they are so happy to finally find nerds like us ready to support them and get them their equipment tomorrow if they need it.
Yeah. I mean, that's awesome. So, I mean, also it's part about being authentic and being yourself, because once you're authentic and you're out there, you're going to attract people like yourself who want to work with you. It's sort of a natural fit, and they're finding you, right? Because the modern way people are buying things till 2024, also, Elliot also said, was people love to buy and they hate to be sold to, right? And if you start cold calling people and selling to people, it's just sort of a turnoff. Maybe that worked 20 years ago, right? But now it's like people shop on their own terms. They're going to check out your TikTok and your YouTube and your reviews and talk to a few customers. And there's usually like 5 or 6 touch points before they even reach out to you for the first time. And I think the thing that is also interesting, and I wish more rental companies like invested in this, is the content, because that is so important. And the groups that are just sort of leapfrogging ahead, it's not, blog posts, those are important, but it's video content as normal how people are engaging. I think TikTok has really changed things, to be honest. I feel like, I don't know, I'm sort of an old guy and a young guy now because I don't even have a TikTok, but I know how important it is. And how did you guys develop that strategy? Was that something that you just sort of naturally developed because you, like you said, you like to buy from vendors who have great content, or was there an intentional strategy behind that? How did you sort of uncover this idea that content is actually driving almost half of your leads?
It was because of my own pain and struggles. So like many rental operators out there, you're wearing 13 different hats on a day-to-day basis. So as I was scaling the business, it wasn't until earlier this year that I was not also an equipment technician. So maybe that was a problem, that I couldn't get out of my own way. And it's proven that way now that we have hired a awesome equipment technician at this location. But to answer your question, Kyle, it's that I had to try to find resources on figuring some things out when I didn't know. And there was not those resources there. So every time a client would call me with a problem and I was like, I think I might know, but I'm not certain, I would figure out that issue and I would make a video out of it. And I would share that video with that client, say, here you go. I think this is going to get you on the go. And all of a sudden I post that video on YouTube of, we'll give it a shot. It's like, what? 2,000 people have watched this?
Wow.
This is the most boring video ever. I made it for one person and it's about the emergency stop button. So that was, the light bulb of, we need to have these boring videos to support our clients, not only when they're on the go out in the field trying to make their living, but it's going to drive the people that we want to be working with.
That's so interesting. I mean, you were experiencing the pain yourself and you went online, you're like, where's the video? So you created, and that's how a lot of things are great inventions come about. It's usually not cooked up in some ivory tower. It's usually a personal experience, and people tired of me probably talking about this, but I Quipli started because of an online writing experience for me 5 years ago. And then even this podcast, like when I was learning about the industry, and I'm still learning about the industry, like there's some resources out there, but I was like, if you want to learn about the rental industry, why aren't there more people talking about it? And there are in groups, and the ARA is an amazing resource. Peer executive groups, amazing resource. So we started this thing that's also sort of taken off. And I think for us as well, I think in my last 5 talks with different groups, like 3 or 4 of them mentioned the rental roundtable, which is this little side thing that we've started, right?
Awesome.
So I get my question back to you though is for, a 1 location, 2 location, 5 location equipment rental group, solid revenue, growing, want to take that next level. They don't understand really their content strategy and how do you actually, post on YouTube, or, should I post on TikTok? Should I post on Facebook or Twitter, Reddit? Probably not Reddit, but like how do I get started in creating good content and tactically take me through how do I do that?
Just create it. You're going to create terrible videos and you'll get maybe a few views. But it's not an egg in your face. Nobody's keeping track of if you're making good content or not. People just don't see it. The algorithms keep it out of people's faces. And you'll make that video and you get frustrated of how come this hit and how come this did not hit. And it's take a step back each time of what did I do? A lot of times I personally find that it's being authentic and being okay with stuttering while you're, trying to go through a video. Be yourself. It doesn't need to be super polished. But keep in mind that you need to be helping somebody solve a problem. There's probably a lot of YouTube users on here that, you're like, all right, my toilet's clogged. How do I fix this? You go to YouTube and you don't want to learn about why somebody's feature advantages of a plunger. Mm-hmm. You want to learn how to fix that problem. You don't care about the plunger's features advantages. Help somebody solve their problem.
That's great. And I think someone else just messaged in. It's about, at least I love that. It's about documenting more than creating, leveraging assets in multiple ways. So like whatever you're doing, if you're like, hey, I got to make this video for a customer because they're asking how to use this equipment, record it, put it online, right? It's just doing your normal stuff. And like you said, you can be stuttering, the camera shaking, but like you get 2,000 views because you're solving a real pain point. And if you're already doing it in your natural day-to-day business life, it's probably valuable to someone, assuming you have a good business, you're not just doing stupid stuff all day, right? Like,
yeah. And any feedback you get from a client, that's a gift. It's a gift. If it's a complaint about the shape the equipment's in, or they don't know how to use it, they thought they'd have more resources, that is a gift. Run with it. And chances are, if one client's coming to you with that, other clients are having that same, concern or issue. So making content around whatever that gift of feedback your client is giving you, run with it. And it doesn't need to be something polished with your logo and, formal call to actions. People want help. They want resources.
And there's also some data that's come out, like the best performing videos are the ones with the guy walking around and the cell phone shaking, right? Like not the perfect studio commercial, because people go, that's fake, right? People want authenticity. They want something real.
Yeah.
The other thing you talked about earlier on, like maybe go back 10 minutes, was the sniper versus shotgun approach when you're talking to different prospects. And that's something else that Elliot brought up as well. It's developing relationships with people over time, with the content, offering value, and then the natural rental will happen later on rather than just blasting out 1,000 brochures across the country, right? How do you guys develop that sniper approach? And how do you, when you're like working with a group, how do you really hone in on making sure you're serving the customer well?
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's certainly a problem for me. Former sales addict. It's any opportunity or client coming and asking for help. The knee-jerk reaction is, yeah, let's do this. Let's get this sewer camera or whatever it is. But we've learned those mistakes of bringing on, okay, this customer needs this. I bet we'll be able to find more customers who need it. We've got plenty of equipment in the warehouse back here that we bought it. It was used once for maybe 2 weeks. Still haven't found that home for it. A lot of that stuff was probably from 2022 when we were blowing up. We were scaling fast, and it seemed like we were Superman, and no matter what we did, we were going to be successful. But now today there's probably a couple $100,000 of rental equipment that we cannot rent or find a home to sell. So with all that being said, it is keeping that sniper mentality. So do you have a clearly defined prospect base you're going after? Who's your target client? Who do you want to serve? Clearly define who that client is and how you're going to do it. That way, you are not being distracted by the shiny objects and day-to-day, week-to-week opportunities. And it's not to say that you shouldn't entertain new customer segments or equipment segments. it's qualifying that before you make that knee-jerk reaction, spending more time with your sales team, looking at data, looking at the quote history on stuff to see, is this a one-off or is this something we can grow into, and do we have the expertise to support it then?
It's about having a plan and not just reacting. I was reading a book this morning, Clear Thinking. It's really interesting, but he talks about most people operate in life with the subconscious. Like someone cut you off, so you sort of swerve back, right? But like having that space to sort of think about and process what your reaction is. And for you as well, who is your ICP? Who is your ideal customer profile? And if someone comes in that's not that, you still may serve them and work with them, but it's more being intentionally thinking about that, not just jumping on every single opportunity maybe you would do in your first sales job, right?
Yeah. No, for sure. It's definitely a tough balance of not taking on those shiny objects, but being intentful about where you're going to grow and further support that customer base.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to ask you about, which we talked about briefly, was the importance of creating a plan for your business. And 2021, you probably realized you're like, what the heck's going on? Like half the assets are missing, like doing less than 100K of rental revenue, just me, right? Maybe another person. Like what did I get myself into? But here we are, 3-4 years later, and you've now sort of solved a lot of those problems. And one of the things you've accredited to that success is the importance of creating a plan for your business. I think you mentioned Traction before, EOS, helps reduce whiplash for your team. Tell me about how important planning is for your business and some of the structure and processes you guys now have in place today.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I am a described tornado. I am controlled chaos. So again, like thinking about that basketball team, I'm going 100 miles an hour, driving hard.
You're like Draymond Green.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe,
without the technical fouls.
Yeah, less tees, less flagrants, maybe a couple technicals, less flagrants. But there's always bumpers that are keeping me in line. But just because my bumpers work for me, I was creating that whiplash. You used the word whiplash. I was creating that whiplash for our team of, wow, this guy is all over the place. So adopting EOS, and for those of you who haven't heard of EOS, it may sound like a cult, but let me tell you, it is going to help you fine-tune running your business. You want your salespeople focused on a list of prospects and clients that are highly qualified. You want them to be snipers in the marketplace. I am not employed by EOS. I'm not sponsored by EOS. But I do believe it empowers managers and leaders to hold that sniper for running their business. I would say that just clearly defining what your vision is, you're forced to just decide what your vision is. When you have that vision, that automatically starts creating some bumpers in your day-to-day decisions, your week-to-week decisions. When you create your traction plan, that's a 1-year plan that creates more bumpers, and you're constantly revising. There's a lot of different bumpers within that EOS system to help guide you so that you can be nimble in running your business, but to make sure that you're always moving in the right direction to accomplish your goal and to serve the clients that you identify.
So EOS, a lot of groups we brought on use EOS, the entrepreneurial operating system. And I think there's different flavors of it. Like specifically for you, maybe tactically, what are the things, top 2 or 3 things from that program that you implement in your business that works for you?
Yeah. I mean, the L10 is absolutely the core of it. L10 is a weekly cadence meeting that we discuss, how did we do this last week? What's a story where maybe our teammates helped each other, or a client that gave us some positive feedback, or a vendor? And then the meat and potatoes of it lies within our IDS, which is where I'm not driving what our company is working on. what is driving what the company is working on are the issues our teammates bring to the table every single week in this IDS. And that is where we identify, man, we had this issue last week. Now our whole team comes together to discuss that issue, learn about it, qualify it, and then we figure out, all right, well, is this a one-off? Let's solve this one-off. A Band-Aid is fine. It's not that big of an issue. Or, wow, this is massive, and this is, we need to make this a priority. Everybody needs to start focusing on how to solve this issue. So Valentine's definitely number one tool. The second tool is probably the annual meeting where you create your traction plan. For me, that traction plan, we revisit what are our goals for this year. What's the most important thing for us to be successful, to hit whatever revenue number it might be, more new product offering, whatever. You define what your goal is for the year from a revenue standpoint, but what are the key steps to get there? Mm-hmm. What are the largest projects that you need to take on? Let's make sure that we fill our time and our bandwidth with the most important things for us to accomplish our goals. So that starts at traction of identifying the biggest steps to be successful in that year. Third piece would be our rocks. Out of that traction, we do create rocks of, here's this quarterly goal. We are going to implement a commerce online for our website, so our customers can do business with us. We'll define we need to accomplish that. If it's too big, then we break it into multiple quarters. And then every single quarter we come together and say, how did you do on this? And what are the next steps of our rocks to be able to accomplish our traction goal?
So it sounds like this has been one of the more transformational parts of your business development in the last few years, is implementing EOS into your entire business.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's definitely controlled the chaos of myself as a tornado. It has helped give transparency to our organization, to our teammates, so they constantly know how we are doing and what the issue is. So if our pipeline does not have enough in it, it's a predictive measure. Our team knows, okay, what can we do to help here? Yeah. Instead of a manager having to go and micromanage perhaps a sales rep and say, what's going on here? Your pipeline's not full. It's transparent. And it's decided on as a team of what are the most important data points.
I mean, one of the things you said earlier was empowering your team and how important that is. And well, the only way to really do that well is to be transparent. And EOS creates the framework for the most important details to be disseminated to the organization in a transparent and clear way. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep. No, absolutely. And it really, I think, empowers our employees to own their piece of their business, and having a metric that they own, so that on a week-to-week basis, you can kind of, get lost in the grind sometimes. And you might question at times, what am I doing? And that's okay. And that's a good thing. But to be able to step back and take a look at, all right, well, this client retention metric or whatever that metric that person has, they can go and say, all right, I made an impact on what we decided was the most important thing, and I'm responsible for that. Really helps give employees purpose and getting their buy-in to really own what they're doing.
It's a chaotic world. Every day was different. And this is like keeps everyone focused, the whole organization, not just you focused, but everybody aligned around what's the most important. Is this something that, how did you first develop, start using EOS? Was that from other mentors? How did you learn about the system and how important it is?
Yeah. Our parent company, decade or so ago, started adapting it. We were at a point of failure. We were in a point of failure, and there was this, whisper in, some of these Vistage groups about, oh, you got to try out EOS. It will really turn your business around. And I don't know if I knew a whole ton about our company until we implemented EOS. I knew how to quote our materials and our equipment and what gross profit was associated with it, but I didn't know anything about our inventory turns or our DSO. And with better understanding that bigger picture, I could see and understand why we didn't want to take a 6% GP deal because of its implication to cash flow. So it really helped me better understand our organization and how I can impact our organization with a client, choosing the right client, pricing things out at the right prices, all that stuff. So, that adopting EOS to our organization, decade plus ago, turned our business around and really helped cement our culture as well.
Well, I love it. And I'm not an EOS sales rep, obviously, either. We try to bring on leading rental groups and fast-growing rental groups like yourself. And the theme here is also people use the EOS very often.
Yeah. It's such a good fit because rental industry is just chaotic. It's so chaotic. I can't imagine how you talk to us chaotic rental people every single day and not pick up our stress and our like fast-paced movement.
I love it. No, it keeps it interesting. And it also, that's what gives us purpose too. It's like, how do we help the chaos, right? How do we streamline, make people's lives a little bit more calm, a little bit more ordered? But anyways, the last topic I want to talk about is just for a few minutes is the importance of focus. And I think we previously talked, you have about 6 product categories that you really focus in, you become an expert in, and all of your content you've created around LinkedIn, YouTube, et cetera, all feeds into those 6 categories, which, like we've talked about, it's actually not that you're doing it intentionally. It's just that you're recording the stuff that you work on a regular basis. You're not trying to be everything to everyone. You have a very specific niche. How important is that niche, and how did you really uncover that niche? And is that something you started with broadly 4 years ago, or something you developed in the last few years?
Yeah. So, the focus is something that is definitely, we kind of talked about it a little bit earlier too, of the focus is absolutely a struggle with the shiny objects that present itself every single week. There are things that we have to say no to, and that's allowed us to continue to become the best. Where, when we first came on, we probably had about the same number of categories, but it was very minimal depth to it. Where now we have really weird stuff that falls in those categories. So a lot of like ancillary items that we're able to rent out with our core products that I wouldn't have dreamed of having just a couple years ago. So we're always adding to those, key buckets of equipment that we serve and adding more depth, more weird stuff so that we can, be the best at, hey, if somebody needs testing equipment in the rental industry or whatever it is, I want people in Facebook groups talking, oh, you need this weird thing? We use it once a year. Mm-hmm. Go to Millennium. They got you.
And a lot of focus is saying no, which you've done, but also saying yes. And when you say yes to something, doing it really well, very deep, thorough, having all these obscure sort of parts that sort of feel weird, but you're the expert in your niches, right? And it's something you've sort of, I guess, gone deeper in the last few years.
More depth in the category.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I want to wrap up here with one more question. Episode 28. I'm a Washington Commanders fan, so Darryl Green episode, if you know who that is, throwback. Back a long time ago. But you mentioned earlier on that you made a lot of mistakes, right? And I think you've shared some of those, and obviously done very well in the last few years. But if you go back to 2021, Joe, what advice would you give that version of Joe, knowing what you know now?
Yeah. That advice would be people. Never lose sight of people in the process that you're making, in the product that you're making. It's always got to be people focused. It's easy to focus on data. That data should be useful for the people that you're managing. The products you're creating, always be thinking about the people, not necessarily, hey, this would be cool, or man, this is going to bump up our ARPU. Think about the people that you're able to serve with it. Yeah, it's easy to get lost in some of the metrics and process and strategic planning. Stay focused on your people. Don't be the man behind the iron curtain like I was in 2023.
I love it. Focus on the people, especially the people. Someone's told me, like, the CEO should build the organization and the organization builds the company, right? And the focus is focused on the organization and the people within, your company, right? Those are the people doing the work. As you talked about earlier, you went from the one-on-one basketball player to you got a full team now. And if you're going to win championships, you got to pass the ball and you got to trust the rest of the team, right? And so it sounds like something you've learned in the last few years.
Yeah. No, that's
cool.
Awesome. Good recap.
Well, Joe, awesome. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate, both of us are the standing desk here. And awesome episode. And everyone, thanks for the questions and for listening in. Thanks, Joe.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. See you guys.